Another great question was the Tippet shooting. Did Lee Harvey Oswald shoot Officer J.D. Tippit? Well, many of these great so-called researchers, and these supposed experts, let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. I say this to everybody in their own field. I don't give a damn who likes it. Nigger, pecker, wood, or wetback, and I said it on film, and I'm gonna keep saying it. No such thing as an expert in nothing. And anybody that believes that, you're a damn fool. No, you cannot be an expert in anything because nobody knows everything. That's a fact of life. You may know something greatly about things, that's fine, but you don't know everything. So there's no such thing as an expert, folks. When Lee Harvey Oswald left the school book depository, he walked up 7 blocks to Padres and got on a bus, coming back in the direction of the book depository. The bus driver's name was Cecil McWaters, and he got on the bus. As untimely and coincidental it could be, a lady that Oswald had rented a room from just a few months earlier, Miss Mary Bledsoe, was on the bus that Oswald got on. And there was a guy on there named Milton Jones, and then there was another lady, nobody who knows her name, and the bus driver, Cecil McWaters. I was able to interview and talk to all these people in the late 60s, early 70s as a young boy, because I got into this when I was in the 10th grade, being here that day. So, when Oswald got to Lamar there and the traffic started getting congested, he got the bus pulled up at the bus stop. He got up, and as he was getting off the bus, he asked Mr. McWaters for a transfer. The transfer was later found in his jacket pocket when they arrested him at the Texas Theater, which was strange because he did not have on the white jacket when he arrived at the rooming house. He did not have on the white jacket. This is what has put some great controversy. But the bus transfer was found in the pocket. Now the only thing I could think is as he left the rooming house after getting there, he may have carried the transfer with him because he did stand at the bus stop in front of the rooming house and the transfer would have still been good. So that's the only reason, and I know it had to be, that Oswald still had the transfer. However, he did never get on a bus in front of the rooming house because Oswald was picked up by a Dallas police officer. Some people thought it was Tippit. It wasn't Tippit. Another officer. He picked him up. They made the right turn onto Zangs, go down to Colorado, made a right, go down to Marsalis, made another right, and came back up Marsalis to the corner of Marsalis and 10th. And that's where this officer lets Oswald out and tells him to go to Max Long's house on 10th Street, which was 3 doors from the house where Aquila Clemons was. Aquila Clemons, a lot of people, oh, she lived on 10th Street. No, she did not. Miss Clemons was living on Betterton Circle. She worked for the Smotherman family there on 10th Street, and she was in there working that day. She did not live on 10th Street. Aquila Clemons never lived on 10th Street. That's big, biggest lie I ever told. But anyway, Mr. Oswald was walking in a western direction. He was going west toward the western sun. It was 1:14, 1:15, hour and a half afternoon time, so about 1:14. Officer Tippit was coming in an eastern direction in his squad car and barely moving according to some 12 to 14 witnesses. Moving at a speed about like that, barely moving in his squad car. One witness who is also still living, her name is Miss Lori. Due to her request and endearment, I do not tell her last name. If she wants to tell her last name, that we're gonna let her do it. And like she told me, when she gets ready, she'll let me know that. We're gonna get back to this in just a second. So you have to combine the two. Jimmy Burt, Big Boy Smith, Bill Scoggins, Arthur Pope, Helen Markham, Domingo Benavides. Those are the 8 witnesses who physically, actually saw the Tippit shooting. And I talked to all 8 of them. Most of these researchers they didn't know nothing about Dallas, let alone the Tippit shooting. They never talked to none of these people. I talked to all of them. That's the difference. And I got their stories, what they saw and heard that day at the scene of the Tippit shooting at 10th and Patton. Now, Oswald went to the rooming house and got the pistol. The police officer that picked him up, he didn't search him. Oswald told him he went to the rooming house to change his clothes. He did put on his jacket, the white jacket. He didn't search him either. Therefore, when Tippit did reach Oswald on 10th Street, you know the story. The squad car eases over to the curb. Oswald's walking west. Tippit's squad car eases over to the curb. Oswald, follow me, he was walking west. He sees Tippit, so he does this. And he starts walking back east. Well, 2 of the witnesses saw the officer in the car wave to him. So Oswald turned back around and walked over to the squad car on the passenger side. Officer was still in the car. Now, during this 10 to 12 minute conversation that the officer and Mr. Oswald had, what was said? If anybody has ever answered that, they're telling a damn lie. How would you know? You weren't there. Only 2 people were there. Well, the officer in the car and the man on the sidewalk. I know what they said. Here come these, oh, let me tell you what, no, you can't tell me shit, because it was not, you don't know what they said. But we can go to great assumption. Because I talked to the Phillips girl who was sitting on the porch, and she was right here, and like she said, Oswald was only at the car 10 to 12 seconds. My adjustment of this is this. As Oswald walked up to the car, Tippit told him to get in. Oswald said no. So, Tippit puts his car in park, it was automatic, opens up the door, engine still running, did cut the engine off. I talked to several officers who were there, they said the engine was still running. Kenneth Croy. First officer at the scene of the Tippit shooting, Kenneth Croy. He was the first officer there. So Tippit opens up the door. He's sitting down in the squad car naturally at the wheel. So he has to turn to his left to get out of the car. And he does, door open. He shuts the door, but it doesn't shut all the way, about to right here. In other words, the first level of the door. Tippit starts around to go around the front of the car. As he gets to the left front wheel, many of the witnesses said Tippit unstrapped the strap and had his hand here and began this motion as he was just getting to the front of the car. In other words, coming out with his revolver. Now, maybe he was going to say, hold it. Maybe he was going to tell him to get back or get on the ground. We don't know. Nobody knows. But anyway, as he was doing that, the man who had backed up to the sidewalk comes out of his right front pocket. Pow, 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 pow. 4 shots across the hood of the car. One bullet hit Tippit here. Another bullet hit him here, right under the heart. Another one, as you can see in the autopsy pictures, hits him here. And as Tippit is falling from these shots, and these were hollow point bullets, one of them, the other 2 of these 3 were hollow point, and one was a round tip. And as he's falling, the last shot, hollow point, as Tippit is falling, the bullet hits him in the right temple, across the hood of the car. Everybody's talking about Oswald shot Tippit 3 times. Then he walked around the back of the squad car and stood over Tippit and shot him in the head. Bullshit. That did not happen. That's the biggest lie ever told. I talked to all the witnesses. They saw it. And they said, no, sir. Fired all 4 shots across the hood of the car. Ladies and gentlemen, J.D. Tippit had no way of knowing that Lee Harvey Oswald had went to his rooming house and retrieved his Smith & Wesson .38 revolver. Tippit had no way of knowing that, and nobody else. Nobody. That's why I know that Lee Harvey Oswald shot J.D. Tippit. No doubt. But Tippit was told, and he was searching for him and got back on track with the man who picked him up. Also, folks, something that y'all don't know, as another great officer, good friend of mine, police officer, still living. I just went and seen him yesterday, and 2 others that's still living. Back in '63, they had the 2-way radios in the police cars. But amongst themselves, ladies and gentlemen, police officers would use 2-mile walkie-talkies. They didn't have no shoulder radio, no. But they would get the 2-way. You could buy them at, even then, Radio Shack. You could buy them at the General Electric store. I remember them very well. I had one when I was a kid. And for 2 miles, mile and a half, they pretty damn good reception. Had a good battery in it. So policemen use those all the time amongst themselves. They were not connected with the Dallas Police Department tapes or the radio. No, Channel 1 or Channel 2. No, these were walkie-talkies. And that's exactly what was used. One story real fast, as you know, when they arrested the 3 hobos here in the plaza, you see a wire running into one of the officer's ears and to the old hobo with the hat on. And I asked that officer, I said, Officer Wise, I said, why did you have a plug in your ear? I knew him very well. Went to his funeral in my hometown, Amarillo. That's where he was born. From Amarillo, he lived in Dallas. And he was a Dallas police officer, 37 years. He was one of the officers. He was one of the officers that took the hobos off the train. And in the picture, you see him in front and Billy Bass in the back. Hobos not handcuffed, anything. But I told him, and he said, do what? I said, that right there in your ear. I said, that's for my earphone. He said, oh, no, I'm having trouble with my ear, the cauliflower with it. I said, no, bullshit, there ain't no cauliflower ear. I said, and the old man in the hat there's got one too. I said, you all was signaling transgression with walkie-talkies. He ended the interview right then. Wouldn't talk anymore about it. But he knew I'd caught him in a lie. Amazingly, Officer Wise and I continued to be friends. We just didn't, he wouldn't talk to too many people about it. As many of those officers, people say this too. And let me tell y'all something. I know this because I knew them all and was around them all my life. Officers on the Dallas Police Department, especially when they retired, they didn't talk to each other no more. You see, I know 2 officers right now, work together every day. They were both on the Dallas Police Department 30 years plus. They might see each other every 8, 9, 10 years. And when they do, hey man, good to see you. Oh boy, good, you doing all right? Okay, good to see you, man, see you later. Boom, it's over. They didn't associate. Policemen do that. Some of them didn't associate with each other when they was on the force. They associated at work, the 8 hours they work or 10 hours, but they didn't, no. But people get that. Oh, and I'll tell you something else that's very stupid and ignorant of these researchers and all these folks. Well, if it's not documented, it can't be true. That is so damn ignorant. That is really ignorant. That is so stupid for a person to say something like that. That is ignorant. I hear it all the time in the Kennedy thing. Well, the police, the FBI didn't document it when there were police officers that never even turned in reports that were right here. Never turned in no report whatsoever. Never.
You mentioned Priscilla Clemons earlier.
Aquila Clemons.
Yeah, in relationship to the Tippet murder.
She said she told 2 different stories on the day that it happened, the day that Officer Tippet was shot. The first story Miss Clemons said she was sitting on the porch. Said she was sitting on the porch and the officer passed by, said she waved at him and she was looking, that she saw him veer over to the right curb on the other side of the street. She saw a man walking, coming in a white jacket. And then she said within just a few minutes, half a minute, she said maybe 30 seconds, the shooting happened, and she saw it. Well, let me intern this, and I still have 4 women that I got 4 ladies I can get here right now who are still living, all in their 80s. One of them is 90. The other 3 are in their 80s. Miss Clemons grew in Oak Cliff, lived like we did, lived on Betterton Circle at the time, and Mr. Frank Clemons, her husband, he knew me when I was a little boy, and she came to church that Sunday morning. We were all at church. Telstar Baptist Church, still in Oak Cliff today, still standing, still in operation. Different pastors, naturally. Reverend Givens was killed in a car wreck years later. But at church, she told the second story, the one that she told some years later as well. And then she told another, first story again. She said, I was in the house ironing clothes. She said, and I heard what sounded like gunshots. Miss Lori, who was walking down the street, said, and Brother Clemens said, I ran out the house and into the street, and I saw the officer laying in the street. Miss Lori, who was walking down the street, said, now that's the truth. She saw Aquila Clemens run out the house. So if she was running in the house ironing clothes, she couldn't have been sitting on the porch watching the police officer go by. So we got 2 different stories there so that's been the controversy about Aquila. I have no doubt that she saw some of the aftermath. She did not see the shooting. She did not see the shooting. And she said she saw these men, the 2 men running after her. That was Jimmy Burt. She took it to be somebody involved. That was Jimmy Burt and Big Boy Smith. They had run up from the next Denver to the scene of the Oswald's gone now.
Were they policemen?
No, they were just witnesses like the other witnesses. Mr. Scoggin, how could he? Mr. Clemens, I think I mentioned it. No, maybe I didn't, and I should have. You know what else happened at the time Tippit was shot? Played a little major role too in it. When the gunman Oswald, pow, 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 shot the officer, right behind Tippit's car, about the color of your shirt. It was a blue 62 Ford Galaxy 500, 4-door. It was a 4-door. White lady was driving, had blonde hair. As Tippit was going so slow, she was kind of behind him. So when he pulled over and Mr. Benavides was coming in his truck, she kind of slowed down almost. She said she did stop. But she said she wanted to go straight on east on 10th Street, and she had come into the intersection, so she was thinking Mr. Benavides was going to come on by, but he stopped. But she said she would have had room to go around, So Tippit got out of the car, and that's what made her stop, because he got, and she said when he went around, she was just going to go around because she had enough room to pass Mr. So when the officer gets out and starts around, like I said earlier, pow, 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 and I forgot. The lady in the 62 Ford say, here's Tippit's car, and she's about right here. Bam! Boy, she ran into the back of Tippit's car. A lot of people, and some police officers talked about that. They saw the cracked lens. Miss Laurie, she talks about it. I think I was at the mentioning of the witnesses also at the Tippit shooting, who saw the Tippit shooting. Sam Ginyard, Ted Calloway, B.D. Searcy, Warren Reynolds, Howard Patterson, C.L. Lewis, lady named Miss Akins. All aftermath shooters, and they all admitted, they said, we did not see the shooting. They heard the shots and then went to the scene. But during the shooting, a lady named Miss Laurie, whose name I will not reveal, still living, Helen Markham, Mr. William Scoggins, the cab driver, Domingo Benavides, Jimmy Burt, William Big Boy Smith, Arthur Polk, Mr. and Miss Malcolm, a lady named Miss Smith who was sitting on her porch, and the woman that was with her, Miss Cash. Her last name was Cash. Those 11 witnesses, 11 different individuals, saw the Tippit shooting. They saw the man pull the trigger, the people that I just named. Out of those 11, Miss Cash is still living. The Phyllis girl is still living. Miss Lori is still living. And Mr. Malcolm is still living. Miss Malcolm passed on. They are the 4 out of the 11 who are still living who saw J.D. Tippit get shot. They were right there. 3 of them lived on 10th Street and 1 was walking down the street. So in 1971, I was able to go and talk to all these people. My cousin Don Brigham is still living. My friend Wayne Canada is still living. Another friend of mine, Pat Owens, I don't know if Pat's still living or not. Another very dear friend of mine, Bruce Wynn, he's passed on. But I would have it, but 2 of them are still living. My friend Johnny Santos, he's passed on. But 2 of them are still living. And they can verify the fact that they would all go with me. Also, some of these people's family members, as I talk to them, are still living. That will verify the fact that I did come talk to their people at their house as they were younger, but they remember me being there. So I was able to talk to all of these people. Mr. Scoggins, Helen Markham, Miss Malcolm. Mr. Malcolm did not go down to the police department. Miss Malcolm went. I don't know why he didn't. I've never known why he never even told me. But Mr. Scoggins, Helen Markham, Miss Malcolm, Arthur Polk, Miss Lori, and Jimmy Burt. They all, somewhere between 5:30 and 6:30, went down to the Dallas Police Headquarters. They put Oswald in a lineup. And they all identified him as the man they seen shoot Officer Tippit. I don't know where these other people are coming up with these stories. Mr. Scoggins told them. He said, yes, sir. I knew Bill Scoggins, went to school with some of his family members in Oak Cliff. He lived on Alaska Drive. He drove a cab for terminal. He was in his cab that day. He said, many times, he said, yeah, Mike. He said, Oswald. He said, I don't know all this shit about an imposter. He said, man, there wasn't but 2 men at that car when the officer was shot. The policeman and the gunman. That's what all of them said. Jimmy Burt was standing at the corner of Denver and Patton, a half a block away. And he said there was only 2 people at the car, the policeman and the man in the white jacket. That's it. Wasn't nobody else around that car. Now, like he said, after the aftermath, people started running up. But he said during the shooting, only 2 people. Arthur Polk, who was standing down at the corner of Denver, and he was going to pick up a set of brakes, for brake shoes for a car. And he was walking from around the corner. And when he looked and turned back, the man he had just seen cross in front of him was up by the officer's squad car. And he said, you know how you look, all of us do when you see a police officer, if he's got somebody stopped, you get a little inquisitive, you wonder what's going on or something. It was in the middle of the day, and of course a lot of people were at work. Wasn't too many people in the neighborhood at home, but some were. And so he said when he looked back the second time, the officer was getting out of the car. And he had seen Domingo's, Benavidez' truck pass by. And he said there was a young guy standing over on the corner and a heavyset guy standing behind him. That was Jimmy Burt and Big Boy Smith. They were standing there on the north corner. He was on the south. And he said, I could see a lady in a pink sweater, that was Miss Lori, coming this way. He said there was another lady in a tan coat, Helen Markham. So, he's seen him about from here, from here to those little pillars over there, those little white pillars. That's about a block, maybe almost. But anyway, about that far, not quite, maybe not quite. So he had excellent view. And he said, when that officer got out the car, he said, I was standing there, and he said, I was looking back. He said, and the officer got to to the front of the car, right by the wheel. He said, man, the guy in the white jacket come out with a pistol. He said, man, pow, 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 pow. He said, oh, shit, that son of a bitch just, and his very word, he always talked about it. He said, oh, that son of a bitch just shot that policeman. He said, that's what he said. He said it to himself, but out loud. And so all these people saw this. There was nobody else at the scene of the Tippet shooting. J.D. Tippet was going to kill Jack Ruby. He was supposed to kill him. J.D. Tippet was supposed to kill Lee Harvey Oswald, and Jack Ruby helped set the whole thing up. He had told Oswald to go to the house of Max Long, and Oswald was still following orders. He was doing just what Jack Ruby told him. The only thing, Oswald went to the rooming house after this happened and got his pistol. None of them knew that. Nobody. And Tippet had no way of knowing it, which proves Oswald shot Tippet. Wasn't nobody else there. There's a man, and I know y'all have read this story, Jack Tatum, claims he was there. Now here's the big deal. He said he was driving a brand new 64 Ford Galaxy 500 convertible, candy apple red, with a white convertible top. That's what he said he was driving. Jack Tatum. 64 Ford Galaxy was a very beautiful car. And boy, if you had something like that, oh man. And everybody, a person gets a new car, everybody look, boy, them people there got a new car. And this guy had a beautiful car. And he told me, he said, I passed right by just before the officer got out of the car. He said, I saw him talking through the window. I said, Mr. Scoggins, I said, I know what you saw was very horrific and very, very sad. I said, but you're a cab driver and you see people every day and you notice things. He was the first one I asked, Bill Scoggins, the cab driver. I said, did you see a brand new 64 Ford candy apple red at the scene? He said, no, sir. There was no such car ever. Number one. The second person, I asked Miss Lori. I said, Miss Lori, I said, I understand you was a woman. I said, some women know about cars, some don't. She said, that's true. But I'm just want to ask you this. I said, when Officer Tippet was shot, I said, did you see a brand new car, candy apple red, a big Ford? She said, no, sir. She said, I saw the man in the pickup. She said, and I saw that lady bumping the back of the officer's car. She said, I never saw that. Okay. I asked the Phyllis girl who was sitting on the porch and her friend, Miss Cash. I asked them, I said, do y'all remember such a car? Now, Jimmy Birch, certainly he loved, and Domingo Benavides, he worked on cars every day. He was a mechanic, worked for Mr. Calloway at the car lot. So I asked all of these people, and if such a car had been there, they would have seen it. Jack Tatum wasn't there. Years later, Larry Howard had him make that shit up, and trying to get rich, and it was really bullshit. And he told them that Oswald shot the president, and he did. But Tatum was not there. Tatum was not there. Well, he never came forward, like I told you. He told his story to the police. That's not coming forward. He gave them his statement on the day of. He never went to the news media. He never went to no researcher. He never talked to no news, Channel 8 News or Dallas Morning News. Told his story on the day of. And he said he saw the gunman shooting. He said there was a man in the West End one day as well firing a weapon. And he was under that desk, and he was just so glad. He said if one of them had come around those boxes maybe and looked toward that desk, they might have seen him. He said, I felt like I'd have been killed. But thank God they left after the shooting. And so by the time he got out from up under the desk, Officer Baker, who had came on up the stairs after him, and he had the encounter with Oswald in the lunchroom, and Officer Marion Baker and Officer, the Deputy Sheriff, A.D. McCurley. They were the first two officers who ran into, one was a Dallas police officer, one was a Dallas County deputy sheriff. A.D. McCurley was in plain clothes, he was a detective. But they were the first two that went up there. So when he saw them, he got more comfort from that. He saw, and he said, Marion Baker in the uniform had his pistol in his hand, and Officer McCurley had his pistol in his hand. And he told him, he said, he had his hands up, he said, I work here. He said, I'm the custodian. And they told him to sit down. He sat down on a box there. And several officers continued to rush up to the thing. Officers had rushed over here as well to the grassy knoll. So he told him, he said, yeah, he said, I seen the shooters from here. And he said, it sounded like some of the windows on the side you can see in the picture, Hope. He said, it also sounded like shots came from outside. He said, I don't know where from exactly. You read a little bit of it? And so he gave his statement to those officers. They took him up to the police department, and he gave his statement at the Dallas, not the sheriff's department right here. Several witnesses were taken over here at the sheriff's department. You've seen the witness statement, says Dallas County Sheriff. But what they never talk about, or didn't, because they don't know, other witnesses were taken up 12 blocks from here to the Dallas Police Department, the building where Ruby shot Oswald that Sunday morning. Many witnesses were taken up there. And they were interviewed, they give a statement. People use the word interview. Now, on the day of the assassination, they interviewed Mr. Zapruder. They interviewed the Newmans. They interviewed Mary Mormon and Jean Hill. I'm talking interview. They interviewed Mr. Brim right over there with his little boy. But many witnesses gave statements, what they saw, say a 2 or 3 minute statement, and then they give them their name, so-and-so, address, so-and-so, phone, and they tell them, don't leave town if you stay here. And so they in Grieveley, he never did talk to anybody else. I asked him. Fortunately, very fortunately, he is still very much alive. He's had some health problems, but he's still he still drives. He just doesn't drive as much as he used to. He's had some health problems, like myself, heart, and but he's still alive. And he worked there, and he was the witness that I say, the one that nobody never talked to in one great sense. The black couple, same thing. On the day of the assassination, they took him up to the police department. She told him what she saw. Her brother told him what they saw. After that, she never, have you ever seen the black couple on any interviews? She was right. Miss Sitzman, I know you've read it. You pull it up. While you get your phone, sir. I'm gonna make this the last of this. I want to prove this to y'all. I don't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to know this. Maril, Marilyn Sitzman, seeing black couple. Missing witnesses, 2 African Americans on the grassy knoll. Miss Sitzman said she saw 2 people, one about 18 and a boy and a girl, sitting on the little bench. Used to be a little bench over there. There it is. You see it right there. Young black couple sitting on the bench. Jack Lawrence, and like I say, I just very recently talked to him. He's still living. And he said, yeah. He said, Mike, he said, when I walked up, see, they were up here before anybody, this black couple. They were young. They'd come to try to get in college here in Dallas. The girl had, she wasn't no 18, she was 20. They were sitting right, see, there used to be a park bench right there where Mr. and Miss Hester was sitting, and there was a park bench over there on the other side of the wall. So when Miss Sitzman and Mr. Zapruder walked up here, Mr. Zapruder said that he spoke to him, and Miss Sitzman did too. She helped him up here, and they were sitting there eating their lunch. Talking about the manhole cover, people shooting? No.
Well, from the sewer.
So yeah, the manhole cover. None of that happened. There wasn't no shot from no manhole under the street and all that bullshit. George Hickey grabbing an AR-15, and he come up with the gun and went off, hit the president in the back of the head. Man.
What about the limousine that Kennedy was in? Did it actually stop so
No.
that they could make it?
Never stopped.
Never stopped.
No.
Going real slow.
See the lights
Never
on.
even slowed down. It just
Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing now. That's how fast it was going right here. Just like that. Barely
he was
moving.
hit?
No, doing the shots. Doing the whole shooting.
So the driver.
Well, let me put it to you like this. If the car had speed, Miss Kennedy would have, the momentum and the force, she'd have never got on that trunk. She'd have went into the front seat.
So do you think the driver of the limo had
That's why some people go to that element that Bill Greer had something to do with it. I don't know. They also, as you know, say that the driver turned around.
Right.
And that glass, that's glass in that petition, he'd have had to shoot through that glass. That was glass. Driver turn around, shoot the president. He had a 45 and the driver shot her. Man, when all this shit goes on. And then let me tell you the thing about the manhole cover. I'm gonna tell you the first man that started that. I knew him very well. He's dead now. You pull him up. He was a long time JFK researcher. Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson is the man who started the manhole cover thing. Penn Jones talked about it a little bit and he said it. But then after Tom Wilson, man, 2 weeks later, and here come the X-Files. Oh, they come down here, boy, they did a big deal about it. Had people down in there, and that's how that shit got started. Didn't no shots come from no manhole cover. And if you go down in there, you couldn't even seen Governor Connolly, let alone the president. No. Shots came from the Daltex building. Shots came from the Texas School Book Depository, and shots came from the grassy knoll. There is a possibility, a great possibility, a 98, that one shot came from the top of the records building. That's the one that hit the man. No, the white building.
Oh. Was there 2 shooters on the 6th floor? I heard.
There have been possibility of greatness that Malcolm Wallace was in the famous 6th floor, and then the West End 6th floor. Some people said it was Oswald. It wasn't. He was in the lunchroom. But the man.
Sturgis? Could it have been Frank Sturgis?
No, Sturgis. I don't even believe he was here. Sturgis was 6'3", and no. I was the man who was impersonating Oswald, if anybody, shooting from the West End one. And they said that bullet is the one that hit Governor Connolly in the thigh. I leave that open because it is a possibility. I leave it open, but doubtful. But I won't say it couldn't happen. That has been a great controversy, sir. I'm glad you asked that, Mr. Whitten, over the years about who the 3 hobos were. So we could stand here and name 100 names, and you knew your research. You said you researched it, Mr. Clemons and many other people. Photographic evidence, one fingerprint evidence, eyewitness testimony of identifying who they saw, not knowing them by name, because they didn't know their name, but later identifying the pictures, and some people who knew one of them, most definitely. The 3 hobos, there's no doubt, were Davy Boy Brown, the younger one in the front, the old man in the hat, E. Howard Hunt, and of course, the 6'2", almost 6'2", 6'1.5" hobo, Charles Ward Harrelson, better known as Charles Hitman Harrelson. Now you got these named Chauncey Hope. Folks, go back and look at all the evidence. Now, I don't use the word, look at the evidence. On the day of the assassination, what were the 3 names of the hobos? And it wasn't either of the 3 I just named. Forrester, Gedney, Dahl. Forrester, Forrester, Gedney, Gedney, Dahl, Doyle. That's the three names that were on the report that Officer William Chambers, or better, Bill Chambers. There were two Bill Chambers on the Dallas Police Department on the day of the assassination. There were two William Chambers, and both of them's middle name began with an E. That was strange, but it's the truth. There was two Ray Hawkins on the Dallas Police Department. One was 6 foot tall, the other one was 6'7". He was at the theater, the 6'7" one, when Oswald was arrested. So there were three Tippets on the Dallas Police Department as well. Well, anyway, folks, no one really knows what their main role or inject was to the assassination, other than they were here to be sure it went off. I will forever believe, no doubt in my mind, Charles Harrelson, who was the badge man, fired the first shot that hit President Kennedy in the throat. Robert Groton, I think, if he tells the truth, will be the first to tell you, a little after the assassination, some 20 minutes, 25 minutes, right over here behind the Daltex building, they found a Dallas police shirt and a bag that had a .38 pistol in it. Robert Groton, in fact, it's in his book. It's in his book, Absolute Proof, his latest book. And Josiah Thompson also talked to witnesses about that. Two old Dallas police officers, both dead, both of them are dead now, talked about that. There are many things, many things that happened here that day that was never reported.